We are following the corruption case of the MP for Long Island. New tonight on Our News, live at 7, the Court of Appeal grants a stay, preventing the start of a trial. And exploring alternatives to corporal punishment, what the state education minister is saying about the practice in schools across the nation. But first, the spotlight on marital rape in same-sex unions again, this time at the National Ecumenical Service on Sunday. And then in Our News at 7:30, an alleged rapist gets his day in court following a series of sexual assaults in southern New Providence. We are inside the courtroom. Our News live at 7 starts right now. Welcome to Our News live at 7. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Kendino Knowles. New developments in the corruption trial of embattled F&M MP Adrian Gibson as the Court of Appeal has issued a stay preventing the start of the trial, which was expected to get underway tomorrow. We've got more from today's court hearing in a moment, but before we get to all the details, a prominent clergyman is hitting out at efforts to criminalize marital rape, saying people can lie. Speaking at the National Ecumenical Service Sunday, evangelist Rex Major questioning how spouses would prove marital rape, adding that some women may use rape as a tool to end their marriage.
I'm not supposed to say this, but I'm troubled by the concept of the rape in the house, because people could lie. And the easy way to get rid of this husband, which I don't want anymore, I can tell people he raped me. Now, how you gonna prove it? His sperm is there anyway, all the time.
His comments coming after Social Services Minister Obi Wilchcombe revealed government is still in talks with the church about some of the wording in the bill. The service held at Evangelistic Temple on Collins Avenue is just one of many events leading up to the 50th Independence celebration. Major also speaking about same-sex marriages, sparking applause from some in the crowd.
We must stand against sexual relations between man and woman. But we must treat them as human beings and try to win them back to the ways of God.
All right, Major had much more to say on the issue. Our Berthany McDermott has the full story coming up in Our News at 7:30. But now to the corruption case of embattled F&M MP Adrian Gibson, as the Court of Appeal issuing a stay on the start of his corruption trial. The trial before Justice Cheryl Grant Thompson was scheduled to begin tomorrow, but the stay prevents that trial from proceeding. Justice Grant Thompson previously refused to stay the case pending an appeal against her decision that Gibson and his co-accused could have a fair trial. As a result, Grant Thompson proceeded to impanel a jury of 4 women and 5 men to hear the case last Saturday. She adjourned the matter to May 23rd. However, Our News learning that the trial won't begin until the Superior Court decides on the appeal, which is expected to be heard on June 13th. Gibson is accused of receiving over $1 million in kickbacks from contracts awarded by the Water and Sewage Corporation while he served as executive chairman from 2018 to 2021. His campaign general, Joan Knowles, Elwood Donaldson, the corporation's former general manager, Jerome Mizik, Peaches Farquharson, and his cousin, Rashay Gibson, are also charged in the case. And a man is dead after he was gunned down shortly before 9 o'clock in Nassau Village last night. Police say shot spotter technology alerted investigators to gunshots in the community, where responding officers say they saw a woman driving a gray Nissan Cube exiting Jackson Street, where they found the man inside with gunshot wounds. Police say they escorted the car to Princess Margaret Hospital, where the victim later died of his injuries. Reports say the victim was near a takeaway restaurant on Jackson Street when a small gray Japanese vehicle pulled up and a passenger opened fire, hitting him in the lower back. Investigations are said to be ongoing. Meanwhile, a collective police effort leading to 9 illegal guns and dozens of rounds of ammunition being taken off the streets over the last week. Police say the weapons were seized on Exuma, Grand Bahama, and here in New Providence between May 15th and May 21st, and that 6 men, 3 women, and a juvenile have been arrested in connection with this latest find. And now to the discussion on corporal punishment in schools after Education Minister Glenys Hanna Martin and Bahamas Union of Teachers President Belinda Wilson both recently acknowledging the need for alternative methods for punishment to be explored. State Education Minister Zane Lightbourne adding to the discussion tonight, saying he's in agreement as the world is advancing.
The discussion is to be had because as times have changed, we know that our methods have somewhat been, the world is moving away from these methods in many cases. And we have to have a broader discussion with family members, with parents involved, with our educators, and with the entire Bahamian community society in terms of what our schools will look like in the absence of corporal punishment.
Lightbourne says there are some institutions that have already abolished the practice, and while he says it may be good for some, it still may not be best for all.
We have some schools that don't practice or don't have the need to practice corporal punishment, and they are successful in finding alternative forms of discipline. I think that that is the major concern for persons who want that to be still, the corporal punishment to still be in place, that they want to know that there is a deterrent and also there is a consequence for negative behavior, and you do not erode the fabric of a peaceful school system by just removing something that would have helped to keep a structure in place.
All right, much more to get to in a moment, including a debate on 2 new arbitration bills now before the Senate, how the Economic Affairs Minister is saying the bills will position the Bahamas as an international arbitration center. But first, the National Hurricane Center is monitoring a large area of disturbed weather in the Atlantic, extending a couple hundred miles northeast of the Bahamas. We're learning from forecasters that it's expected to move over the southwestern Atlantic over the next couple of days. Joining us now with more on this and your first look at temperatures is meteorologist Greg Thompson. He's in the Weather Center. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Gideon, and happy Monday evening, everybody. We are watching an area of low pressure to the east of the islands, National Hurricane Center keeping a close eye on that, but very small chance for it to form. It's going to continue to drag towards the north and east and away from us. We'll show you that in our satellite picture, but it's very warm on the outside right now, 82 degrees with a few clouds. Your winds out of the north-northeast at 10 miles per hour, and your feels-like temperature hanging out near the 80-degree mark. Temperatures around the islands tonight, right now, it's 83 in Freeport, 81 in Marsh Harbor, Abaco. We pick up another 83 in Alistown, Bimini, and in Nicholstown. Over in Great Harbor Key, 82. Governors Harbor, 80. Central Bahamas, temperatures in the low 80s there as well, with 83 in Kemps Bay. 82 is in Georgetown, Deadman's Key, and in Coburn Town, San Salvador. Alistown, Bimini, pardon me. You guys are 81. And into the southeast Bahamas, 83 in Duncantown, Ragged Island. More 82s popping up in Colonel Hill, Cricket Island, Delectable Bay, Abrahams Bay, and the Turks and Caicos Islands, Providenciales. Deep south in Agua, you round out our temperature profile at 83. Of course, as I mentioned, we were watching this broad area of low pressure to the east of the Bahamas that kind of tried to form, but it's not really doing much. A lot of the activity is well displaced from the east of the system, the low pressure system. But we have a northerly flow that's bringing some dry air across our area, weak pressure pattern in place that's keeping us with some light winds. Maybe a couple of spotty showers expected with that, but that low pressure system will continue to drag out towards the north and east and away from us, and we think it's going to be merging with the frontal boundary by the middle of the week. That's your first look at weather. Stick with us. Look at your extended forecast is still to come.
Thanks, Greg. Ahead on our news, catching international flights. We'll tell you new Florida routes on Silva Airways from North Eleuthera and Abaco. This as smoother landings for flights at the airport in Bimini as runway resurfacing is complete. We've got the latest in tonight's Work in Progress segment. But first, becoming an international arbitration center. What the Economic Affairs Minister is saying about its potential as senators debate 2 new arbitration bills. That's coming up when Our News returns.
Whether you're battling a chronic condition or offsetting a new injury, Doctors Hospital's comprehensive rehab services offer the help you need now.
Go to doctors.
3 advanced facilities at Collins Avenue, Carmichael Road, and Cable Beach means your personalized plan for care is just a visit away. From physiotherapy to occupational therapy and speech and language pathology, our team approach is all about rebuilding together. For a full list of services, visit doctorshosp.com/rehabilitation. Doctors Hospital, trusted and best care now. Isn't your health worth it?
It's your thing. Do what you want to do. It's your thing. Do what you want to do. It's your thing. Do what you want to do.
shareholders are very happy.
That's your thing. Do what you wanna do.
The Davis administration hoping to make the Bahamas an international arbitration center. The Economic Affairs Minister revealing as much today as senators debated 2 arbitration bills. Jamila Mizik reports.
Kicking off debate on the Arbitration Amendment Bill 2023 and the International Commercial Arbitration Bill 2023, Leader of Government Business in the Senate, Michael Alcides, stressing the importance of alternative dispute resolution.
National court systems cannot handle the overwhelming number of disputes that arise. We know that in the Bahamas, it can take several years for a matter to move through the court system.
Alcides adding that international arbitration has become an important tool of economic development that is directly connected to the increase of economic growth through foreign direct investment.
The Arbitration Amendment Bill 2023 reflects measured innovation and thoughtful consideration of the Bahamas' competitive advantage to become a leading alternative dispute resolution jurisdiction. And most importantly, the Arbitration Amendment Bill 2023 is the result of a collaborative effort with local and international industry stakeholders.
He says the Davis administration intends to use the strength of the financial services industry to support the advancement of the ADR industry.
With the passing of the Arbitration Amendment Bill 2023, and the International Commercial Arbitration Bill 2023, the Bahamas will position itself to compete not only internationally but regionally. There are other jurisdictions within this region that have moved towards establishing their respective arbitration centers. However, Madam President, those jurisdictions pale in comparison to what the Bahamas offers as an established international financial center, in addition to our other strong industries.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jamila Mizik.
All right, thanks a lot, Jamila. Well, you've now got 2 new flights from the United States to the Bahamas to choose from, as Silver Airways is announcing the new Family Island routes. The flights both originate from Orlando and will provide flights to North Eleuthera International Airport and Abaco's Leonard Thompson International Airport. The Ministry of Tourism, Investments and Aviation says the weekly flight will first stop in Marsh Harbor before continuing to North Eleuthera exclusively on Saturdays. Silver Airways already has flights into the Abacos from Fort Lauderdale and Tampa. To learn more on this, head over to ournews.bs. And now to tonight's Work in Progress segment, as our Marlena Leonard sits down with a senior engineer in the Ministry of Works and Utilities to discuss a recent runway resurfacing project, among others, over in Bimini.
The Ministry of Works and Utilities has an extensive roster of ongoing and upcoming projects throughout the Family Islands. Senior engineer for the Family Islands, David Cox, tells us one of their most recently completed projects in the north is Bimini's Runway.
The most recent work we completed in terms of airports, we did the Bimini Airport, which was totally resurfaced. We did 6,000 feet of reconstruction to that runway. That was a little complicated project. It only recently completed in terms of the striping works, but in the building of that airport, we had to construct a new or temporary runway.
The senior engineer tells us it posed quite a challenge and slowed down the process.
We couldn't have planes landing on the existing runway while we were repairing it, so we had to build a temporary runway, which, took some cost and time to get to do that before we could actually to do the runway repairs.
And that was only the start of the bumps along the way for the project. Cox tells us the logistics of bringing materials in also posed an issue.
There were a lot of challenges in Bimini in terms of getting materials in. If you know Bimini, the airport is in the south, and we had to bring the materials in the north
right? And then we still had to barge them. They were landed in the north, and we still had to barge them over on a smaller barge to the south. So that was quite some logistical work.
Reporting for Work in Progress for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
When our news comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as U.S. Republican Senator Tim Scott throws his hat in the race for president. This as Facebook faces a hefty data mismanagement fine. The price tag, over $1 billion. And later, Colorism in the Bahamas taking center stage at a recent conference on Grand Bahama. When our news returns, we put a spotlight on the divisive issue and how it can have some far-reaching effects.
This is the Little Caesars Stuffed Crust Pizza. Get more pizza for less money. Only $12. It's a whole new level of pizza with cheese stuffed crust so spectacular that there's nothing left.
Pizza.
This is Our News. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. U.S. President Joe Biden and House Republican Speaker Kevin McCarthy expected to meet today to discuss the debt ceiling after what McCarthy called a productive phone call. A White House official confirmed Monday's meeting but offered no specific time. McCarthy, speaking to reporters at U.S. Capitol Hill following the call, said there were positive discussions on solving the crisis. Before leaving Japan following the G7 summit earlier on Sunday, President Biden said he would be willing to cut spending together with tax adjustments to reach a deal.
I'm looking at where our differences are and how could we solve those. And I felt that part was productive. But look, there's no agreement. We're still apart. The agreement would be, let's get our teams back together so everybody clearly understands what we're talking about, what they're talking about.
And U.S. Senator Tim Scott has become the latest Republican to throw his hat in the 2024 presidential race. The 57-year-old, who has represented South Carolina in the chamber since 2013, is promising to offer an optimistic vision for America. With about $22 million in cash on hand, Scott has more campaign funds than any of his rivals. Ex-President Donald Trump is currently the runaway front-runner among Republicans for the party nomination.
This is the freest, fairest land where you can go as high as your character and your grit and your talent will take you. I bear witness to that. I testify to that. That's why I'm the candidate the far left fears the most.
Meanwhile, China says products made by U.S. memory chip giant Micron Technology are a national security risk. The country's cyberspace regulator announced on Sunday that America's biggest maker of memory chips poses serious network challenges. It means the firm's products will be banned from key infrastructure projects in the world's second-largest economy. It is China's first major move against a U.S. chip maker as tensions increase between Beijing and Washington. And Meta was hit with a record $1.3 billion fine by its lead privacy regulator in the European Union for its handling of user information, and given 5 months to stop transferring users' data to the United States. Francis McGuire reports.
The European Union's lead privacy regulator punished the tech giant for its handling of user information. It also gave Meta 5 months to stop transferring users' data to the US. Meta said it would appeal the ruling and called the fine unjustified and unnecessary. The EU has been in a long-running battle with Meta over where Facebook stores its data. Meta pointed towards a new data protection framework agreed by the EU and US government last year. The firm said last month it expected the agreement would be fully implemented before it had to suspend transfers. That would mean its previous warning that a stoppage could force it to suspend Facebook in Europe will not happen. Officials have said the framework could be in place by July, but Meta also warned it might not be ready in time.
And now to the region where over in Jamaica, a cabinet reshuffle is seemingly imminent as veteran Jamaica Labour Party politician Carl Samuda has announced his departure from the cabinet as Minister of Labour and Social Security. Samuda, who spoke to multiple media outlets this weekend, says his resignation will take effect today. The 81-year-old told reporters in a recent radio interview that it was always his intention to serve 2 to 3 years in the cabinet after the 2020 general elections. And at least 20 children were killed and several others injured in Guyana as authorities say an early morning fire swept through a dormitory at the Medea Secondary School on Monday, about 100 miles southwest of Georgetown. According to a government statement, 5 planes have already taken off to support regional health officials with additional medical supplies and medevacs, with some 7 children prepared for medevac to Georgetown. President Ifran Ali is calling it horrific and says officials are concentrating now on the children that survived. And finally, from Dominica, where well-known broadcaster Ken Richards has died. Family members say the 67-year-old former BBC broadcaster passed away at the Dominica China Friendship Hospital on Sunday. Many of his media colleagues from around the region remembering him with posts on Facebook. His former BBC colleague Oren Gordon describing Richards as a unique human, unafraid to speak the truth to power. Our news executive producer Jerome Sawyer and myself had the privilege of working with Richards both as correspondents for BBC Caribbean Service. Our heartfelt condolences go out to the Richards family at this time. Still to come in our news, today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was May 22nd, including the 55 Hurricane Dorian victims laid to rest in central Abaco. Plus, taking steps to save our environment. We've got the latest tree planting exercise by the Bahamas National Trust, launched on Grand Bahama. And then in our news at 7:30, RCI's proposed project on Paradise Island back in the news tonight as the PLP slams an Atlantis executive over recent criticisms. The story when our news returns. Welcome back to Our News. This week's As I See It, an homage to retired Superintendent Don Moss, who recently passed away. Columnist Tanya Smith-Cartwright sharing a personal story about Moss, who she described as a super cop to the very end, and writes that she's sure the Commissioner of Police would attest to the fact that the Royal Bahamas Police Force was a better place over the years with dedicated officers like Moss. She shares personal anecdotes in this week's column, available now at ournews.bs. And remember, you can find a new column there every Monday. That's ournews.bs/opinion. And 3 new female pilots for Bahamas Air, 2 massive drug busts, cabinet ministers and senators sworn in, and Dorian victims laid to rest. It's time now to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was May 22nd. Take a look. On this day in Bahamian history in 2012, Bahamas Air introduced 3 female pilots, Gwendolyn Ritchie, Gail Saunders, and Frances Smith. They were each promoted to Dash 8 aircraft captains. It was 28 years since the company hired its first female captain, Patrice Clark Watson, in 1984. The 3 were introduced at a special ceremony at Lyndon Pindling International Airport.
Professionally.
I must say, I'm especially happy to serve as a role model for thousands of young women who aspire not just to be pilots, but professionals.
For me, it's kind of the combination of a dream and a lot of hard work.
Aim for the skies. You can do it. A lot of sacrificing and determination, and you would achieve what you set your mind out to do.
Then May 22nd, 2014 brought news of a massive $900,000 drug bust.
Drug Enforcement Unit, very pleased this morning to report another successful drug interdiction mission.
The early morning bust happened in southern New Providence around 6 a.m. when officers swooped in on a white van registered to Mia Bahamas, which had signed a contract with government to revamp New Providence underground water systems. Authorities believe the suspects were transporting 37 packages of marijuana to another location when they were busted on Faith Avenue and Cowpen Road.
The white van, when examined, contained a quantity of suspected marijuana, and 4 males were taken into custody.
Then on May 22nd, 2017.
In all things, I will be a true and faithful minister. So help me.
Desmond Bannister was sworn in as Minister of Works along with a group of Free National Movement senators who received their instruments of appointment at Government House.
I am pleased that the government members of the Senate reflect the diversity of our Commonwealth.
May 22nd, 2019, at least 300 NIB workers staged a sick-out. This as others used their tea break to gather on the front lawn of the board's Blue Hill Road headquarters to express their grievances. At the center of the issue was an outstanding industrial agreement and what union leaders called a slow claims system.
We are negotiating, and the union perhaps believe this is a strategy that they must engage in, but we are comfortable, we're level-headed.
A year later in 2020, an 8-month-long emotional ordeal finally came to an end when 55 unidentified hurricane victims were laid to rest. However, many families were still upset at the time at the lack of answers over identification and the handling of the bodies.
If you're asking me what I think, this has been mismanaged from the storm.
And finally, in 2022, 68 kilos of cocaine was seized at the Nassau Container Port. 21 Chinese nationals were taken into custody for the $1.3 million drug bust. It was a joint operation between police, the United States Drug Enforcement Agency, Homeland Security, and the Department of Customs. All right, the spouse of the Prime Minister, Anne-Marie Davis, traveling to Grand Bahama to take part in the Bahamas National Trust's tree planting campaign. One of the trees planted was a lignum vitae at the Rand Nature Center. Director of Parks is Ellsworth Ware.
It's used as a medicinal tree for all types of, it cures all kinds of ailments. And as a hardwood, it's been used for boat building, furniture making, even the construction of bowling balls and ball bearings, all kinds of stuff. Okay. Now the breadfruit tree which is, I think, the favorite tree of our First Lady, is also very important. But I don't think a lot of people really know much about the uses for the breadfruit. It's just starting to come to light now, I think, especially through some of the work you've been doing. But it's a very nutrient-dense fruit. You know, it's has all kinds of benefits as well for health. It's also a very filling fruit.
Council member Karen Sanchez says the council is honored to have had the spouse of the Prime Minister take part in the effort on Biodiversity Day.
The Bahamas has been a signatory to the Convention on Biodiversity since December 29, 1993. The convention recognizes national parks and protected areas as one of the best ways to protect biodiversity. We celebrate today our unique flora and fauna that are protected in 32 national parks across the country.
All right, we've got more from that ceremony coming up in our news at 7:30, but now to the Color, Class, and Colonialism 50 Years and Counting Conference over in Grand Bahama. It may have wrapped up, but the conversation continues. Our Marlena Leonard has the story of one UB student who conducted a recent study exploring the issue locally.
The University of the Bahamas senior Makeda Sergiu presented her survey findings exploring the concept of colorism in the Bahamas at the Color, Class, and Colonialism 50 Years and Counting Conference in Grand Bahama.
I asked a series of questions. One of them was if Bahamians thought that colorism exists in the Bahamas. I defined it, of course, and I asked them if they thought it exists in the Bahamas. Most of the respondents agreed yes.
Collaborating with her professor, Dr. Jesus Meza Morales, the survey explored colorism from both ends of the spectrum, both how it impacts darker-skinned and lighter-skinned people in the Bahamas. Sergiu also asked the question, what makes a person black in the Bahamas?
This was one of the most interesting questions when I was reviewing the data, because I really would have thought that Bahamians would have said, the color of, the texture of your hair. That was what I was expecting to get from the populace, but from the respondents. But 42% of the respondents stated that it was the color of your skin. That was also expected as well. But then this one threw me off. They said 32% of the respondents said that family lineage had a part to play.
When asked if they thought light-skinned people were a minority and excluded from being black, the respondents said
84% responded yes. They said yes, the black Bahamians think that they are less of a true Bahamian just because of their skin color, and that's prejudice. Another person said yes, they make me feel like I don't fit in. I'm not black enough to share their struggles, even though I do indeed.
Sergiu concluded that colorism is present in the Bahamas and says it doesn't come without a price.
When we segregate ourselves based on skin tone, it can cause a lot of identity issues for dark-skinned and light-skinned individuals. Colorism does exist in the Bahamas, and I just think that there needs to be more research on it to solidify the claims.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Marlena. Interesting findings there. And if you want to see that story again, and for all of today's top stories, you can visit ournews.bs. It's going to do it for us in News at 7. Joining us now is Italia Hall with the latest headlines. And Italia, that was quite some interesting data.
Yeah, very interesting.
Hearing the percentages and what people thought. I mean, have you been in those conversations before?
No,
colorism?
No, but we see it, we hear about it.
I've had a few. They become very divisive, I will say. I'll say that much.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, thanks so much, Ken. Well, matter of rape in the news again. We've got some controversial comments from the Ecumenical Service coming up, and the Works Minister speaks ahead of the debate on a new fiscal budget. Here are your latest headlines. Who's telling the truth? First tonight on Our News Live at 7:30. Following widespread debate on the topic, a church leader is questioning whether or not women will tell the truth when it comes to marital rape. Our Berthany McDermott has the full story. Also, more time granted by the Court of Appeal in the trial of Long Island Member of Parliament Adrian Gibson. We have the details. Plus, the way forward. Hear what's planned for the new budget year as government prepares to present the annual budget communication for the upcoming fiscal year. And later, the tree of choice. Hear why the spouse of the Prime Minister is promoting the breadfruit tree and how its benefits can possibly help climate change. That story straight ahead. Our News Live at 7:30 is back in a moment.
Just when Leo was about to buy this useless pair of hands
Welcome to Our News and thank you for joining us. I'm Natalia Hall. The issue of marital rape taking center stage at the National Ecumenical Church service Sunday, as one clergyman said, people can lie. He also slammed same-sex unions during his fiery comments. Bertha McDermott reports.
A prominent clergyman is hitting out at efforts to criminalize marital rape, saying not everyone tells the truth. Speaking at a National Ecumenical Service Sunday, Evangelist Rex Major questioned how spouses would prove marital rape, adding that some women would use rape as a tool to end their marriage.
I'm not supposed to say this, but I'm troubled by the concept of the rape in the house, because people could lie. And the easy way to get rid of this husband, which I don't want anymore, I can tell people he raped me. Now how you gonna prove it? His sperm is there anyway, all the time.
His comments come after Social Services Minister Obi Wilchcombe revealed government is still in talks with the church about some of the wording in the bill. The service held at Evangelistic Temple on Collins Avenue is just one of many events leading up to the 50th independence. Major doubled down, cautioning the country to tread lightly on the issue.
What's the proof? And don't fool yourself. Some people will get rid of you like that. This is a critical issue here, very critical. Yes. People lie, and they have liars with them. Because we don't want this man no more. I got my eye on something fresh. I'm serious. Let's be careful how we tread this road here now.
Major also spoke out against same-sex unions. His comments sparked applause from some in the crowds.
We must stand against sexual relations between man and woman. But we must treat them as human beings and try to win them back to the ways of God.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Bertha McDermott.
A 27-year-old man is behind bars after being accused of a spree of rapes and sexual assaults in southwestern New Providence. Shantino Roll appeared before Chief Magistrate Joyanne Ferguson Pratt, charged with rape, forcible taking, armed robbery, abetment to rape, assault, and threats of death. Prosecutors allege that on May 2nd, Roll abetted the rape of a 31-year-old man. They also allege that Roll's accomplice made the man perform a sex act at gunpoint in bushes off Carmichael Road. 2 days later, Roll and an accomplice allegedly abducted a 31-year-old taxi driver at gunpoint before taking her to the well fields, where she was sexually assaulted on May 4th and 5th and threatened with death. On May 13th, Roll and another man allegedly forced a 38-year-old woman into their car as she walked along Bacardi Road. The woman was taken into bushes where she was tied up and raped and threatened with death. Prosecutors say the pair also robbed their victims. Roll was on bail for a 2018 murder. Roll did not have to enter pleas to the charges, and he was remanded to prison. He returns to court on September 6 to receive voluntary bill of indictment papers. The corruption trial of embattled F&M MP Adrian Gibson will not start as expected this week after the Court of Appeal issued a stay in the matter this morning. The stay will prevent the trial from beginning before Justice Cheryl Grant Thompson on Tuesday as scheduled. Justice Grant Thompson had previously refused to stay the case pending an appeal against her decision that Gibson and his co-accused could have a fair trial. As a result, Grant Thompson proceeded to impanel a jury of 4 women and 5 men to hear the case last Thursday. She adjourned the matter to May 23rd. However, the trial won't begin until the Superior Court decides on the appeal, which is expected to be heard on June 13th. Now, Gibson is accused of getting $1.1 million in kickbacks from contracts awarded by the Water and Sewerage Corporation while he served as its executive chairman from 2018 through 2021. Gibson is charged along with 5 others. Police have put a price tag to the illegal drugs that was confiscated on the high seas during a joint operation last week. The 33 bags of marijuana have a street value of just over $1.1 million. Police arrested and charged a 44 and 36-year-old in connection with the major drug find last Thursday. Around 1:30 p.m. that day, officers attached to the Drug Enforcement Unit in collaboration with the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, Air Marine Operations, and U.S. Coast Guard Guard were conducting an operation in an area southwest of Crooked Island. They saw a go-fast vessel. When the two suspects saw the officers, they reportedly began throwing the packages of marijuana into the water. The boat was intercepted and searched along with the immediate area, and 1,142 pounds of marijuana was found. In a matter of days, the Davis administration will present the annual budget communication articulating government's plan for the upcoming fiscal year that begins on July 1st. Ahead of next week's communication, Works and Utilities Minister Alfred Sayers prefacing new allocations within his ministry.
We have a number of recommendations we have put forward. You know, the government has given priority to the construction of a national parliament and also a cabinet office. So those national institutions will be given priority in this coming budget year.
In addition to budget allocations, Sayers says government has signed a number of public-private partnerships
with various lenders, and that has given the government a greater capacity. For example, in Exuma, with the roads, in Eleuthera, and a number of other family islands. We have a number of PPPs, and that gives the government to accelerate the infrastructural projects within the country.
Free National Movement leader Michael Pintard hitting out at a recently released green paper on corporate tax, calling it half-baked. The green paper gives 4 possible new tax structures for businesses that will align with the OECD's tax policies. 136 jurisdictions, including the Bahamas, have agreed to implement 15% global income corporate tax by 2024. While he says the F&M supports discussions towards a more equitable tax system, he pointed out a few issues with the government's green paper. All right, we apologize for that technical difficulty. We'll have that in a later newscast. Well, warm weather around the islands as the summer gets closer. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center with a first look at weather. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Natalia, and welcome everybody for a quick check on conditions outside our studios and around the islands. Right now, it's 82 degrees outside with intermittent clouds, basically just a few floating out there. Winds out of the northeast at 10 miles per hour, and your feels-like temperature is at 81. Broad low-pressure system to the east of the Bahamas, still trying to get its act together, but the National Hurricane Center giving it a very low chance for formation. Will continue to pull out towards the east and away from us. On the backside of that, dry air mass moving across the area, keeping us rather dry, and with just a couple of isolated showers expected in the forecast. That's a quick check on conditions around the island. Stick with us. A look at your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on our news, debate continues between Atlantis and government over the Royal Caribbean project on Paradise Island. The PLP chairman speaks. Also, did you know that the breadfruit offers nutritional benefits for the human body? Well, the spouse of the Prime Minister is a part of a campaign to plant the trees on several islands across the country. And cutting costs. Hear why a CEO says solar energy is the way of the future, and how homeowners can cut down on their electricity bills. That's all coming up when our news returns. PLP Chairman and Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell weighing in on the ongoing battle between Atlantis and government over the Royal Caribbean investment on Paradise Island. Following a statement to employees, the Department of Labor launched an investigation at the resort amid reports employees felt pressured and intimidated by an executive. Mitchell is questioning why the resort is taking such a stance with government.
Why Atlantis has chosen a public fight with the government over the RCL investment on Paradise Island strains credulity, particularly since they had no such fights when the F&M was in power, and since they have a Prime Minister in Philip Davis in the PLP who's known for his listening ear. The government gave conditional approval to RCL subject to the laws and regulations, but before the horse was out of the gate, Atlantis lobbed a bomb saying that they opposed it and went further to ask their employees to lobby against it. The result of that pressure by them on the employees was a complaint by the employees to the Department of Labor, and now that is being investigated by the department.
Last week, Atlantis Vice President of Government Affairs and Special Projects Ron Roberts said Atlantis executives were surprised by the Labor Department's investigation into the resort. Mitchell found this curious.
Curiously, the CEO, Audrey Oswell, did not come out from behind the curtains this time, but dispatched the Vice President for PR, a Bahamian face, to say that they did not like the Department of Labor's actions. They suggested it was retaliation, but the facts don't bear out that assertion.
In honor of the country's 50th anniversary, the Bahamas National Trust has embarked on a tree planting campaign. The wife of the Prime Minister visiting the island of Grand Bahama to take part in that effort, planting trees at several key locations.
We have to raise the awareness of how good the breadfruit tree is. It's the most underutilized tree there is in this region, in the tropical region. People don't know the importance of it, and more research is being done about the breadfruit tree and its uses.
The spouse of the Prime Minister, Anne-Marie Davis, visiting Grand Bahama on Monday to plant a lignum vitae tree at the Rand Nature Center as one of the 50 trees the Bahamas National Trust will plant in recognition of the country's 50th anniversary. Davis also planting a breadfruit tree at the Rand Nature Center and at a number of urban renewal centers across the island. She says it's been proven that the breadfruit tree is one of the only trees that survived Hurricane Dorian in East Grand Bahama.
We decided this is the tree that we should plant as much as we can. It is not only a tree that feeds and a tree that is very important to this area.
She explains experts say the breadfruit tree will be the tree of choice during this climate change era, adding that the fruit itself has a lot of nutritional benefits.
It's good for helping the ecosystem because the canopy that it creates, it encourages other trees to grow very healthily in the shaded areas like the papaya and other trees. It's also good for horticulture. The birds could feed and pollinate very well.
And next, the spouse of the Prime Minister says she plans to go to Abaco and Eleuthera with the Bahamas National Trust to continue the effort.
I'm putting aside trees to give to plant in schoolyards, in the yards for certain places like the children's home, places who would need food and not have to always incur costs.
All right, good information. Well, the Bahamas enjoys lots of sunshine, but are we taking advantage of it? Founder and president of NT Corporation Limited, Owen Bethel, believes Bahamians should explore solar energy, especially given the high cost of living as a result of our fuel-driven economy.
The cost of doing business in the Bahamas is driven significantly up by the cost of fuel, the cost of energy in terms of any manufacturing, etc. And so if we are going to look to diversify the economy, if we're going to look in terms of just the cost of living and being able to, accommodate and really deal with the number of persons who cannot afford electricity at this point, solar is really the answer.
Bethel adding that the natural resource should be taken advantage of sooner rather than later. He's calling on residents to take the matter seriously. While he says more can be done, Bethel believes the country is headed in the right direction.
Unfortunately, there's been a lot of lip service, I think, to it in the past. We are seeing what appears to be a strong commitment, certainly from the government today, and the Minister of the Environment certainly made it clear that it is not just a joke, it's real. The situation is real, and therefore the solution which we need to impart is real, and solar is that answer. So I see it going into the future, that it is going to be a big part of our growth and development.
It's now time for tonight's Financial Market Minute, brought to you by RF, your local investment bank. This has been your Financial Market Minute. To explore the best performing mutual funds in the Bahamas, visit our website at www.rfgroup.com.
Stephen Gardner coasted to a win in his first race of the season, and John Quill Jones wins their first game with the Liberty. Don't go anywhere, our sports is up next.
Nice weather for the start of the work week, but how long will these conditions continue? Meteorologist Greg Thompson is back with your extended weather forecast when our news returns.
Today's sports update is sponsored by Michelob Ultra, distributed in the Bahamas by Jimmy's Wines and Spirits.
This This is our news. Welcome back. A track and field legend dominates in his first meet of the year, and Jonquil Jones helps the Liberty get into the win column. Here's Tage Adderley with a check on sports. Tage?
Thanks, Natalia. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Our Sports. I'm Tage Adderley. Stephen Gardner may be the most dominant force in the world when it comes to the men's 400-meter race. Out for most of last year with injuries, he's trying to pick right back up where he left off. Stephen Gardner coasted to the gold in the 400 meters at the Bermuda Grand Prix USA track and field event. The reigning Olympic gold medalist won the event with a time of 44.42 seconds, just ahead of another Bahamian, Alonzo Russell out of Grand Bahama, who took the silver. The USATF Tour picks up in Los Angeles next week. If this is what he's doing in rehab, we can't wait to see what he'll do as the season progresses. Stevie's back like he never left. We love to see it. WNBA superstar Jonquil Jones and the New York Liberty went winless in the preseason before dropping their first regular season game. That streak was demonstratively ended on Sunday. Jonquil Jones got her first win with the New York Liberty on Sunday against the Indiana Fever, 95-73. Jonquil had a steady performance with 14 points and 3 rebounds, and Brianna Stewart beasted out to the tune of a franchise record 45 points and 12 rebounds. Nalissa Smith led Indiana with 15 points and 12 rebounds. Look for some big games from Jonquil as she gets used to her new teammates in a new city. That was your look at sports. I'm Tage Adderley.
Lovely temperatures to start off the work week, but what can we expect for the rest of the week? Greg is back with your extended weather right after this quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Our News. Nice weather outside the Our News studios this evening, but there is some rain in the forecast this week. Greg is back with your extended weather. Greg?
Yeah, thanks again, Natalia. Welcome back, everybody, for our final check on weather. We do have that low-pressure system, the National Hurricane Center giving it a 10% chance, very low, for formation over the next couple of days as it continues to track towards the north and east. There is a frontal boundary to the north of the Bahamas. We expect this low-pressure system to merge with that boundary and race off towards the Bermuda area. Could give us some swells out there, but nothing much in terms of any weather, as we have a lot of dry air on the backside of that moving across the area. Weak pressure pattern in place that's continuing to keep us with some very light winds. So boating conditions, we're asking you to exercise some caution. That's all due to the swells created by this low pressure system. Future forecast showing the moisture associated with that system out there in the open Atlantic staying to the east of us. Dry conditions expected through our area through Tuesday, and then into Wednesday. That frontal boundary will sag across central Florida, so we could see an uptick in some shower activity across the northwest Bahamas once that system gets into our location. Boating conditions for all areas tonight to tomorrow. Your winds will be out of the northwest across the northwest Bahamas, and they become more northeasterly in the central and southeast. 10 to 15 knots, seas running 2 to 4 feet over the ocean. Your high tide will be at 10:52 tonight. Here's a look now at your national forecast. In your extended forecast, quiet weather really for us for the next couple of days. That frontal boundary sagging near us by Wednesday, Thursday time frame. So we keep some showers in the forecast, but those temperatures are now approaching the summer-like values. That's a look at our weather. Make it a safe night, everybody.
All right, thanks so much, Greg, and thank you for joining us for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Natalia Hall. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great evening.